It is now 6:30, and I would ask that you please stand for the invocation to be given by Chaplain Leonard Himes with the Beulah Baptist Church, and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray together. Our Father, we're grateful, Lord, for our great county, how you've blessed us. And Lord, as we've watched the growth through the years, we give you the praise for that. And Lord, tonight as we assemble to talk about the needs, the business that must be dealt with, we ask for wisdom of all those involved. And Lord, that the right decisions would be made that would honor and please you. May we do that with our lives individually and here collectively this evening. Bless this time together. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and welcome to this evening's Board of Commissioners meeting. The meeting is now hereby called to order. And at this time, we'll call for any changes or revisions to the agenda. Hearing none, the floor is now open for a motion to accept the agenda as printed.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any other discussions? All in favor? The agenda is passed unanimously. We're now moved to our next item, which is a presentation by the Atlanta Region Transit Link Authority, and we invite up Mr. Chris Tomlinson, who is the Atlanta Region Transit Link Interim Executive Director, and welcome to Henry County.
Thank you so much. Is it this one? Well, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Henry County Commission. It's my pleasure to come before you and talk to you about this new state-level authority, the Atlanta Region Transit Link Authority. Through my presentation, I just want to take a few minutes to give you an overview and then talk a little bit about what this means for the region and what it can mean for Henry County. Here we go. So the Atlanta Region Transit Link Authority is a new state-level authority that was created by House Bill 930 in last year's legislative session. It was signed into law on May 3rd of 2018. And really since that time, we've been doing a lot of the initial setup that comes with standing up any new organization. The bill that created it did something that you never have really seen before at the state level. It created a 16-member board, 15 voting members, plus the GDOT commissioner. 5 of those members are appointed at the state level, but the other 10 members each represent a district, and they're selected through a process of local caucuses made up of state representatives, state senators, county commission chairs, and at least one mayor within each of these districts. That's the current setup of the board. And when it comes to Henry County, in terms of representation on this board, you have 2 members from this area of the region that represent parts of Henry County. Felicia Franklin Warner, who also serves as the vice chair of the ATL, is also a Clayton County commissioner, and Mr. Howard Mosby, who's a retired state representative. Now, looking into what is the ATL? This is not MARTA, it's not Greta, et cetera. This is a new state-level entity that's focused on regional transit planning and regional transit fund management. How it's going to do it is represented on this slide. The ATL is going to be creating a regional transit plan. This will be one of the principal activities of this new authority. There's a lot of activity happening in this region around transit. Several cities and counties have undertaken to create transit studies or transit plans. The ATL is not a substitute for those efforts, but how do we as a region knit or weave these together to have a truly regional look at how we're going to approach transit, And then in turn, how can we at the state level support these needs that are really driven by the local communities, but how can we support them to attract the much needed federal dollars that are literally critical and crucial to moving forward with a lot of our transit initiatives. The ATL is hoping to work with different parts of the region and different counties and cities, help plan and prioritize those projects, and help make the case at the federal level to bring down those dollars. We believe that by taking a regional approach will increase our competitiveness because we're all competing for that same pool of money on a national level. I've had an opportunity to spend some time in Washington talking to officials at the Federal Transit Administration, and they seem very open to this approach. They want to see us as a region approaching how we're going to plan transit and movements throughout the greater metropolitan Atlanta region. We'll also be generating regional transit policies and standards. There's a lot of talk in this region around bus rapid transit. What is that? How do we define it? There's a lot of talk around how we can better get data and provide it to the private sector so they can help us modernize our transit systems. By coming up with policies and standards in these areas, we're going to be able to move that effort forward. And there's a lot of information that's going to deal with how do we brand our transit in this region. Because again, this is much broader than MARTA and anything else that's happening. Henry County has really just started into its forays of transit exploration. Well, how do we provide connectivity for the transit services in Henry County to and through the rest of the region? These are some of the things that the ATL will be doing. Well, also, the last thing I'd point out on this slide is the bullet point at the end. We'll be creating, because the statute requires us to do so, an annual report and audit of all the transit operations and services within the region. Today, you literally cannot go online and find a map that shows all of the transit services that are operating in the region, and they're already not well connected. Over time, we should see how we're able to connect these better and provide better movements throughout the region, and we'll be reporting on that on an annual basis. There's a lot more detail on what goes into the plan, but the plan itself will consist of any projects that are forecasted to need funding at either the state or federal level. Notice I did not say local funds. For projects being 100% funded with local dollars, that is outside of the jurisdiction, if you will, of the ATL, and those are reflecting local priorities. So we wouldn't be necessarily stepping in into that realm. How are we going to state our priorities to the federal government? Well, part of the discussions in Washington is they would like to see the ATL bringing in what we call letters of support. So even if it's a project that just means something for a local area, imagine going up to the federal government and the state in partnership with, say, Henry County, and hopefully the congressional delegation and the weight of the governor's office is behind being able to say, we support this project, we understand what it means for the local community, we also see how it helps drive things in the region forward. Seeing that type of support is usually sometimes the critical deciding factor in trying to attract and win these federal dollars. To do this transit plan, right now we're engaged in coming up with that transit planning process. We're working closely with our partners at the Atlanta Regional Commission. This is not being done in a vacuum just within this agency. And we believe that by May of this year, the ATL board will adopt the process. That'll put us in a position to do a call for projects by starting around this summer. The board has adopted these governing principles to make sure that what we're doing at both a project basis and an overall portfolio basis is looking at these key factors of what do these projects mean from an economic development or an equity or a mobility and access, and of course, are we being innovative in the use of our limited funds? And you'll be able to see this reflected on both a project scoring level as well as an overall plan level. The board itself has had 3 meetings to date, and just wanted to provide you information with what we've been up to. It's everything from administrative things such as approving bylaws and just the basic things to get started, but it's also working through how we're going to interact with the region. We will be working through a lot of the existing groups with the Atlanta Regional Commission, because we don't want to be duplicative of the work and the structures that are already in place. But as I said, and as you can see for the rest of the year, we plan to produce that first regional transit plan before the end of calendar year 2019, as well as that audit report that I mentioned. How will people plug in? It goes beyond the 16-member board. We think it's a diverse board, but the region is so much broader and more diverse. So we have a couple of working groups that are being established. A letter from me went out actually last Friday to Henry County and some of the other areas. That lists a Transit Executives Working Group. It will be the first time that we've created a group of agency director level entities who have transit. So we'll get together, we can talk about how these policies and things, what is the real world practical impact of those. In Henry County, now that you've entered into what we call fixed route service, Henry County will literally have a seat at the table. The other group is this Operators Working Group. It's a much broader group. It's an existing committee of the ARC. But what I wanted you to see or take away from this slide is it goes beyond what we're doing at just our board meetings. We want to get feedback from a broad spectrum of elected officials and representatives from around the region because we don't want to do any of this work in a vacuum. Keeping with that same theme, we're going to be working with all transit operators in the region. The first two rows show public agencies, but I draw your attention to that last row when we're talking about Uber, Lyft, or these e-scooters that are popping up. This is not a substitute for communities that are trying to decide if they want these scooters or the safety and how they regulate them, but it's acknowledgement of the fact that a lot of what's happening in the transit spectrum literally wasn't even on our radar a year ago or a year and a half ago, and it is part of the fabric. So how does this get integrated? We'll be looking at broader than just public providers. Again, some of our upcoming priorities. We're going to finish up this process. We're going to start working on our transit plans. We're going to open up a call for projects to be submitted. These projects will then roll into the federally required plans of what we call the TIP, or the Transportation Improvement Program, or the long-range plans. I know I went through a lot. I want to be respectful of your time, but just a couple of stats for Henry County, which I'm sure many of you are already familiar with. But Henry County has seen vibrant growth over the last decade and is still part of the region that's going to continue to see growth. And so these are just some background and demographic stats. But the next bit of stats talks about, and this is how we look at it from the ATL perspective. We're looking at the average commute time at over a half an hour. We're looking at what connectivity there is. You notice that within a half mile of transit, and this stat's a little bit old, these stats are being updated, but there was only about 505 jobs and less than 1,000 workers that could consistently get to an economic activity center, i.e. a job center, by utilizing transit. We're hoping by better connecting up this region, we can open up the rest of the region to the talent pool that lives here in Henry County, or vice versa. The jobs and the companies that are locating here can attract and reach workers who have their real jobs, but they may not have access to the consistent transportation to get to and from. So these are some of the things and some of the reasons that the ATL was created, some of the activities that we'll be doing, and we're looking forward to partnering with Henry County as you continue to explore how transit fits into this county. We do not want to substitute for the opinions of any county. Everything we're doing is on a voluntary basis, but from a planning and coordination aspect, we're here to work with our partners throughout the region. So thank you, and Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, we thank you for that presentation. And of course, are there any questions from the board? I know I have one. Any questions? Commissioner Thomas?
One of the questions I have, I was looking at your representation, and you're stating that Henry County will have a seat at the table. I'm concerned that that we need someone that actually knows this county to be intricately involved in the process that you're placing before us. So what other sideboards or committees will be formed to make sure our voice is heard?
Great question. We're working through a combination of levels. So you do have the board, you have the two representatives I mentioned, neither of which reside in Henry County. But already, like for example, with our regional transit planning process, we sent out a call to all 13 counties asking for participation of either your transit planning staff, if you have any, or your transportation plan or planning director. And Henry County has been participating in that process. Because Henry County is one of the counties that has actively and is spending money in transit, that transit executive work group, which is going to meet quarterly, I'll be a part of that. We really think this is where the roll up the sleeves work will actually take place. And what we're going to do, so those practitioners, those people who are charged with delivering, like for Henry County, will help form things well in advance before we ever take anything up to the ATL board or to the regional commission. That is a group that, surprisingly enough, does not exist today. And Henry County, assuming you accept, will be literally one of the inaugural members of that group.
Any other questions? On slide 9, if you could go back to that.
Sure.
And I think it was identifying some of the criterion by which projects will be evaluated as it is, of course, going through the ATL prioritization. Are those equally weighted? Because I'm looking at the mobility and access, and especially as I know our transit feasibility study speaks specifically about connecting with employment centers and connectivity to the airport and even downtown. But is this going to be, are any of these categories going to be weighted heavier than another category, or are they all equal?
Well, great question. These governing principles in and of themselves won't be weighted. There are specific criteria that we're in the process of developing, both the specific criteria that will be measured as well as the weighting. And as we come up with that planning framework, we're going to be socializing that information. Think of these as the board's guardrails of making sure that whatever we come up with in a process is reflective of these and what we envision happening with these. So there'll be all the specific criteria, there'll be all this number crunching. But what we anticipate and envision being able to do is you will see some type of indication of how a project fares in each of these categories. Whether that is going to be numerical or red, green, yellow, or something more like a consumer reports dashboard, that's what the experts that are working on this are coming up with. So you'll have specific weighting, but in each of these categories, you'll see how a project fares. That being said, it is probably both unrealistic that every single individual project scores high. You can have a good project, even on a regional basis. You have a good project that has a lot of impact locally, but doesn't have a ripple effect in the region. That's not a bad thing. So I would just caution everybody, yes, you'll be able to view every project against these governing principles, but we'll be also looking at the entire portfolio to see how it hits on each of these areas.
Great. Commissioner Holmes?
Yes, not too long ago, maybe a year or two ago, it was announced that the state was going to spend $2 billion on truck lanes through Henry County. Is there a possibility that those funds can be reallocated for I-75 rail?
Well, for rail, probably not. And the reason for that is the state funding that's going to go into the I-16 to I-75 truck lanes is coming from the gas tax, which constitutionally is limited to road and bridge money. The rest of the money that's going into that project, because they're not spending $2 billion in gas tax, is envisioned to be a public-private partnership. That being said, as we look at other types of transit, we are trying to explore, are there opportunities to do public-private partnerships to leverage the limited dollars and attract either private dollars into it. So it wouldn't be from that pot of money, but the same type of concept we want to be able to bring forward. And I should have mentioned one other thing in House Bill 930. Not always popular to talk about it, but it's in there, so I want you to be aware. But it allows counties to consider a transit-specific T-SPLOS, where counties could decide to do up to 1%, so it doesn't have to be a full penny, for up to 30 years to fund transit projects. And that is designed for, one of the questions I've gotten from elected officials, none from Henry County, but maybe you're thinking it, who wants to bring a 30-year T-SPLOS in front of voters? The reason that one can go so much longer than a traditional T-SPLOS, which is usually 5 years, is unlike a traditional T-SPLOS, which is always focused just on the capital cost, building, say, a rail line or what have you. This one was specifically designed so you could look at the capital cost as well as an ongoing stream for the operation and maintenance, or to look at it as a stream to potentially bond against to build something that could be as expensive as rail, but have the way to pay back that debt. So you could advance meeting the needs that are necessary and repay it over time. One thing I'd point out also about that is that transit-specific T-SPLOS, it does not work like the way MARTA's sales tax works, where all that money's pooled. Whatever county passes it, that money would be collected, generated, and legally must be spent within that county. So counties would fully control that. And so.
Are there any other questions? So Commissioner Clemens?
I just want to say, I think we all agree that transit options work. And I think what has happened for us as a county with the 75 reversible lanes, that we want to make sure that there's a full and complete assessment of the projects before they spend billions of dollars and put them in the communities, and they haven't really addressed the needs of the community. So I want to know from an ATL standpoint, what type of evaluations options are you guys going to put in place before you decide what comes into a community?
Great question. That transit plan, regional transit plan that I'm talking about, it will have 2 horizons, a 6-year horizon and a 20-year or longer horizon. The reason for those very specific dates, projects that happen in the 6th year are projects that we're likely to roll into what's called, again, the TIP. Those are projects that are going for federal funding. The criteria for those, we need to understand what the project is, where the sources of money are coming from, so we can talk about, is it financially feasible to roll in. The 20-year, we're still going to look at that, but obviously it's a little less stringent on the financial requirements. It is our hope that the entire region will then be able to see both the long-term projects as well as the near-term projects in one place. So there's transparency and no one's being surprised. And once this is up and running, we suspect that people will be submitting projects as they're ready, so that, again, you have one place to see where everything is happening in this region. So.
Okay. Any other questions? I have one last one. Could you define the different alternatives of transit so that people will understand that there's, we've heard the mention of rail, we've heard of Greta. I mean, could you just quickly give just a listing of different transit options?
Yes. In this region, all we're really familiar with is local bus and MARTA rail. There's so many other things that are coming online. You've heard this term bus rapid transit. I really wish the first word wasn't bus. What that is a wheel-based transit that can offer a lot of the same advantages of rail, but for a lot lower cost. We've talked about arterial rapid transit. Think of that as a high-speed option. It may be mixed with traffic, but you would put in what's called traffic signal prioritization. So as that bus comes up to a light, it either turns green or holds the green for it. There's all types of permutations in between. One of the things we're hoping to do with the ATL is, and this gets back to your planning question, let's see if we can first figure out what's the need that we're trying to meet, the frequency of service that we want, and then back into the technology. That would be a leap forward for the region. If you heard any of the controversies around the Beltline, all of us focused on light rail, or even a lot of times when we're talking about trains. When I was recently in DeKalb County, they have a lot of projects that are looking at rail. Heavy rail that like MARTA does is running about $250 million per mile to build. But when I ask them why they want rail, they say, we don't want it to be stuck with other vehicles. You could literally build a dedicated lane, move vehicles at 80 miles per hour, average speed of a heavy rail train is 70 miles per hour, and unlike rail, have it get off and go to your final destination. The key, what people want is that dedicated, we call it dedicated guideway, so it's not stuck with other motorists. There's a lot of things we can do with transit to deliver that type of experience that people want when they automatically say rail. And we'll be happy to provide more information, and we will be to the region on some of these options.
Okay, well, very good. Are there any other questions, comments? Commissioner Holmes?
Yes, can you foresee state or federal infrastructure investment in Henry County without a T-SPLOST?
I can. I can't guarantee that I'm not a representative, but the reason I say I can see that happening is we have two recent things in the past. The state did a $75 million, we call it the Go Transit program, which awarded money from 10-year bonds, the state's repaying it, and that money went to 9 different jurisdictions for 11 different projects. The state last year passed a $100 million bond package. Governor Deal directed that towards the Georgia 400 project. But I would imagine that type of money going to one project, we certainly cannot stop there. I think the key is going to be those counties that are taking initiatives like Henry County and are also willing to invest. Can the state help out, not only trying to attract those dollars, but probably with targeted investments, with targeted investments. And that reminds me of one thing that's also in the bill. Every September 1st of the year, the ATL board can submit a list of projects to the General Assembly for the General Assembly to consider putting bond funding into, which again would be repaid at the state level. And in August of this year, we'll be working with the board to identify that first list. But that is an annual requirement to list projects that may make sense for the state to invest in.
Okay, are there any other questions from the board? Hearing none, we thank you again, and we appreciate your team being here as well. So
Well, thank you so
again,
much,
Mr.
and I
Thomas.
look forward to working with Henry County.
Okay, we'll now move into our next item, which is our consent agenda, and the following items are considered on the consent agenda. The first one is a resolution from the Community Development Department requesting authorization for Community Development Director as certifying officer for environmental review records for activities assisted with federal funding awarded by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The second consent agenda item is one from Public Works and DOT, which is a resolution requesting the authorization of the chair and/or the county manager to sign all new utility service agreements needed to have utilities connected. So those are our items on our consent agenda. Is there any one of those that the board wishes to remove from the consent agenda? Hearing none, the floor is now open for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion or comments? All in favor? Okay, the consent agenda is unanimously approved. We're moving to our next item, which is a resolution from Parks and Recreation approving the shooting, simulated artillery, and simulated gunfire at a special event at Nash Farm. And we'll invite up Mr. Tim Coley to make that presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
The resolution tonight is for the Henry County Board of Commissioners to approve shooting, simulated artillery, and simulated gunfire at a special event at Nash Farm Park, April 11th through the 14th. Tim Knight is having a reenactment at Nash Farm to provide living history reenactment of battles that took place around Henry County. Several living historians will talk about life in the 1800s, school programs on Friday, arts and crafts on Saturday and Sunday, battle reenactment on Saturday and Sunday. And according to Henry County Code, Section 3-13-4, it states shall be unlawful for any persons to use or possess in any park or recreation area any fireworks, explosives, or firecrackers unless such use has been approved by special written permission granted by the Board of Commissioners of Henry County.
Okay, we've heard the presentation. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, the floor is now open for a motion.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Are there any questions or comments?
Yeah, I've got a few questions.
Sure.
Mr. Coley, how long have we been doing this reenactment?
I think since 2008. The
Okay.
last one was in 2016.
Since 2008. Have we ever had any problems out there?
Not at any of the reenactments, no, sir.
Okay. You know, Nash Farms, we took a piece of property from somebody that was going to develop it. We went out there, we didn't, this board didn't, but the previous board went out and condemned this property for its Civil War history. And I can't think of a better place to have something like this, a reenactment. And I want to say, I take it, this is just a hobby like everybody else has hobbies. You may like to fish, you may like to play golf or whatever, but this is a hobby of these people that want to come in and do this reenactment. And I totally support it.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. The resolution fails. All right. Okay. We'll now move into the next item, which is a resolution from the Public Works DOT Department, which is a resolution approving a non-revenue street light at State Route 20 and Elliott Road and State Route 20 at Turner Church Road. And we invite Mr. Burkhalter up for that presentation.
Chair, Commissioners, good evening.
Good evening.
The Henry County DOT received a request to place a non-revenue streetlight at the intersections of State Route 20 and Elliott Road, and also State Route 20 and Turner Church Road. Snap and Shoals would install these lights. DOT has recognized the importance of lighting the intersection in order to further improve safety and operation, and the Henry County DOT requests approval of this resolution. If you have any questions.
All right, we've heard the presentation. Are there any questions from the board? Okay. Okay, Commissioner Barham.
Since we've put this new road at Turner Church, there's been a lot of accidents there, so I hope this is going to clear a lot of that up.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, the floor is now open for a motion.
Move to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Okay, that resolution unanimously is approved. We now move to the next resolution, also from Public Works, and this is a resolution approving a non-revenue street light at Jonesborough Road and Babbs Mill Road and Nash Farm entrance.
Yes, ma'am. Again, the Henry County DOT has received a request to place a non-revenue street light at the intersections of Jonesborough Road and Babbs Mill Road, and also at Babbs Mill Road and the entrance to Nash Farms. Georgia Power would do this installation. Again, the DOT has recognized the importance of lighting the intersections in order to further improve operations and safety, and Henry County DOT requests approval of this resolution.
Thank you. We've heard the presentation. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, the floor is now open for a motion.
Move to approve.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Thank you. That resolution unanimously is approved. Thank you. We're now moving to our planning and zoning items, and the first one is public hearing COMP AM 18-04, which is Fleur, requesting an amendment to the comprehensive plan for property at the northwest intersection of Karl Parker Road and Old Highway 3 North in District 2, and we invite Mr. Nieves up for the presentation.
Good evening, Chair and board members.
Good evening.
The applicant is requesting to amend the future land use map designation for the subject property from medium-density residential to commercial to support a rezoning request for C3 highway commercial zoning, for the property located at the northwest intersection of Karl Parker Road and Old Highway 3. The rezoning request will be heard following this presentation. The policies outlined in the comprehensive plan are intended to ensure that new developments promote a better sense of place and preserved valued elements of the community character. A request to amend the future land use map designation for the subject property does not seem reasonable based on the current zoning trends of the area. This part of the county has remained predominantly residential rural, and the subject property was also designated for medium-density residential previous to the adoption of the current comprehensive plan and future land use map. This demonstrates the area's development trending towards residential as opposed to commercial. On January 24th, 2019, staff took to the Zoning Advisory Board a recommendation of denial. The Zoning Advisory Board also recommended denial of the request consistent with staff's recommendations. With that being said, staff recommends denial of this request, and I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from the board before we begin the public hearing? Sure, Commissioner Clemens.
Can you point out the other commercial properties around this parcel?
Yes, ma'am, just a moment. So I realize that due to the colors, it's difficult to see, but the subdivision where the subject property located should be a brown color for residential mobile homes, manufactured homes. And to the right, I'll point on the map, there are some commercial zone properties.
That's commercial. Where else is it commercial? What about across from it?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Across from it, what is that, the M1?
Yes, that's correct.
Have other questions?
It's good.
Okay. Okay, well, this is a public hearing, so at this time, we'll invite those who are wishing to speak in favor. The collective group will have a total of 10 minutes, and likewise, those who wish to speak in opposition will have 10 minutes. So at this time, we invite anyone wishing to speak in favor to please come forward now. Seeing none, hearing none. Again, anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward now.
Good evening, board
Good evening.
members.
If you'll state your name, please.
My name is Fleur Grady. My husband and I are actually homeowners of Henry County. My husband's an Atlanta fireman, and I am a part of Henry County small business sector. As submitted within my letter of intent, I would like to utilize my property at 166 Karl Parker Road for the purposes of creating, distributing, storing, and selling my all-natural beauty products and home products. I would like to be given the opportunity to enjoy my property, just like the other in arm's length industrial and commercial surrounding properties. Ignorantly, I allowed myself to be advised into requesting a C3 for the use purposes. However, as I journeyed on to this very expensive and quite intimidating process, I was rerouted to a better suited C2. This was due to a couple of members of the advisory board expressing their confusion as to why I requested a C3 for the purposes of my craft businesses. As I continue on with this venture, I was enlightened on the other request that could perhaps be possible and better suited for what I am trying to accomplish. That would be one of a variance with conditions or other suggestions from the board, which are very welcomed. I need the space for my business and the ability to continue to perform within my business. I am currently working from a storage shed. At this time, I would like to show the board why I believe that my request should be not objected, but positively embraced due to what is currently surrounding my property site. There are currently 3 properties combined of industrial and commercial that are in very close proximity of my property. They are all 4 corner lots between Karl Parker Road and Old Highway 3. With my property included, I call this the 4 corners. picture I will be presenting is facing the sod farm and the construction company, taken from across the street from my property and the small commercial property. The sod farm is to the right and the construction property is to the left. Oh, the other way, like this? Okay, great. That's even better for me. This actually is the construction company, and this is actually the sod farm. And this is actually my property, and this is actually a commercial property. So all four corners. This picture illustrates facing my property and the small commercial property from across the street from the sod farm and the construction company. My property is to the left, and the commercial property is to the right. So this will be the commercial property. This will be my property. The sod farm is here, and the construction company is here, all four corners. This is what's going on currently at the construction company. This is what's going on currently at the sod farm. It's across the street from my property. This is what's going on currently across the street from my property to the left, which is the commercial property. It's like that every single day. And this is what's going on with my property currently. Little zoning sign. This is across the street from the sod farm. That's a clear view of facing the sod farm. Just to show distance between the commercial property, it's just the left of my property if I'm facing Old Highway 3, across the street from the sod farm and the construction. This is where that commercial property is, all but 10 feet away from my property. 10 feet. Okay. In addition, there are presently many home-based commercial businesses in the area. And interestingly enough, as I tried to explain previously, there is clear signage of commercial for sale that the owner is willing to divide. It is a fairly large vacant site. It sits directly on Old Highway 3, and it is adjacent to the small commercial property that is across the street from my property, and I would like to show you those visuals. So, this is Old Highway 3. So the construction company will be right here. This right here is the commercial property. This is across the street from my property. So you're going all the way down the street, right? Here goes the sign, boom. And then I'm gonna show you a larger picture of that signage. And then right here it says commercial to divide. And that is adjacent to the commercial property that is across the street from my property, and that is actually on Old Highway 3. In closing, my property has sat for over 50 years, untouched. The previous owner, John Grillman, was willing and ready to sell me the property, fully embracing my intent. The property has clean soils, water which percolates, a clear plat and survey, clearance from the Water Authority, which is clear. There won't be any easements, and the land is completely flat and ready for structure. And I'm going to show you that property again. See how flat it is and just ready. That actually concludes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll see if there's anyone else wishing to speak in favor, and we'll invite you back later. Thank you as the applicant. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor at this moment? Okay. At this time, likewise, we'll give a collective time of 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in opposition. If you would please come forward now.
I would like to thank the board for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight.
And your name, sir?
My name is Robert Tucker. I live on Conkle Road, which is around the corner from the proposed rezoning. And I'd like to say that I'm opposed to the rezoning for the following reasons. The property in question is adjacent to other residential properties, and the land use plan designates this property as residential. If there was a problem with the property being changed, that should have come up during the land use plan when they reviewed that and approved that, rather than waiting until after it was done, I think. And if we're going to have a land use plan, why don't we follow it? Is the question I have on that. Point number 2, the planning and zoning group are professionals that understand the rules and regulations concerning zoning and have recommended denial for the rezoning request. If we are not going to go with their requests or their recommendations, why do we have a zoning and planning group? Number 3, there are plenty of commercial properties in the surrounding area, both land and buildings. If you drive down Highway 3 towards Hampton, there's plenty of commercial property there available. There's also buildings available in the area of Highway 81, and there are buildings available in Hampton, the city of Hampton. Also, there's plenty of buildings and property available on Highway 1941. And then if you go back towards Lovejoy, same thing. There's property in Lovejoy that's available for commercial businesses. Why can't we use up the commercial properties already available before we start rezoning other properties? Point number 4 is this property. If this property is rezoned, it could set a precedent for the area surrounding this property and also for the rest of Henry County. If you've got someone 2 doors down that wants to start some kind of business on Karl Parker Road or up Highway 3 towards Lovejoy, and you change this rezoning, how are you going to say we're not going to change your rezoning? And it'll just steadily creep down Karl Parker Road and up Highway 3. Point number 5, I've lived on Conkle Road for over 30 years. While I have been there, code enforcement has had to deal with a radiator shop being opened on residential property on Conkle Road. They've had to deal with vehicle storage on residential property on Karl Parker Road, where a person was storing disabled vehicles that you could see from Karl Parker Road. Also, on Conkle Road, a gentleman twice has tried to open up a landfill on his property on that road with the explanation that he was an old county family and the commission was doing him a favor, and it wasn't this board, this is several years ago, was doing him a favor by letting him open a landfill, and that was stopped by code enforcement. And then it was brought up at the last meeting that there was businesses already operating on Karl Parker Road, a dog care facility and a wrecker service. Well, if that's true, then the code enforcement needs to deal with that also, because that's all residential area there. And I would like for it to stay residential. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Again, is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Hearing none, this now concludes our public hearing. We can invite the applicant back up for any questions or comments from the board. So, board, are there any questions or comments? Commissioner Thomas?
How is it that this one parcel of land, this is for staff, Out of all the commercial spots she showed around that, it's not commercial.
It's zoned RMH for mobile manufactured homes.
Okay, but so when was the land use for this area updated?
The future land use designation was updated with the comprehensive plan, which I believe was in November.
October 16, 2018.
2018?
Yes.
What was this land prior to the 2018 update then?
I believe I have that map. Just a moment.
I mean, it's just hard for me to see how one little speck of land with all this commercialization around it, somehow or another, this one piece is for mobile homes or whatever you called it, and not be included in the commercialization. And I'm all for entrepreneurship because I believe in entrepreneurship and I want to help promote it as much as possible. So prior to 2018, what was the land use for this particular area?
It was also medium density residential. I don't have the map with me, but I do have it in my notes that it was medium density residential.
Okay.
So to add to that, Commissioner Thomas, the trend of this area along this intersection, even though the eastern side of Karl Parker Road shows commercial zoning, the majority of those developments there are actual residential. On the corner, yes, there is the sod farm to the south and west. Yes, there is an older commercial building to the northeast corner. But the majority of this area trended over the last decade as residential, which is why the future land use is designated as medium density to the left, to the south and west, to the north and west, to the northeast and southeast.
And what is the size of this lot that we are talking about?
Ma'am?
What is the size of this particular lot that she's talking
1.1
about?
acres.
I didn't hear what
1.1 acres.
And
1 acre.
Commissioner Thomas, if you will, I managed to find the previous future land use map, and you can see that it was also in the orange color MD for medium density.
All of the residential that's around that area, that's the manufactured homes, residential.
Yes, all of
Yeah.
the orange.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So would it not be an upgrade to try and put an ongoing business on this 1 acre instead of having the manufactured homes there? I'm trying to see why you have a 1 acre lot for manufactured homes with commercialization almost around it and not want to upgrade it to that. So that was my question to staff, because it would appear to me if you have an entrepreneur that's willing to build a business here to help improve this particular area, that would be advantageous to the county and be counterproductive for something for mobile homes.
Well, if
So
you
I'm trying to hear both sides of the story here.
So the area surrounding the subject property is zoned for mobile homes. All of it is. While on the eastern side of Karl Parker Road, it is zoned commercial. It's currently being used for residences. And the future land use designation is also slated for residential. So you can see in our previous and in the current.
Well, I hear exactly what you're saying, but one of the things that I'm listening for is how to upgrade our county from what's traditionally there could be an upgrade by encouraging development of businesses in the area. And from what I can see that's surrounding that and what you're telling me that we're zoned for is contradiction as to how to move the county forward productively. And that's what I was listening for. So I think I have my answer. Thank you.
Commissioner Holmes?
Can you explain what craft manufacturing is?
I develop my own natural home and beauty products. So I was actually advised that that's what that's called per zoning, craft. But it's almost like a Bath and Body, if you will. I don't know if you guys know Bath and Body. They have lotions, body soaps, brushes, combs, and things of that nature. Everything is all natural. So I actually cultivate it myself, design it myself, develop it myself, actually ship out it myself. And I want to actually have more space and more room. That's why I actually bought the property for those purposes.
And do you need a C3
I
for
didn't.
that?
I was advised that I did.
No, Commissioner Holmes, the use that the applicant is proposing is permitted in all of our commercial zoning districts, and she could do it as a home occupation as well.
I mean, I would be concerned if someone wanted to zone a property C3 next to my home, but I wouldn't be
very ignorant
opposed
in
to
the fact I did not
C1
know.
or something of that nature. Yeah.
But I will remind the board that this is, the case we're presenting now is the comprehensive plan amendment, and that is irrelevant of the zoning request that she's requesting.
Okay. Other questions or comments from the board? Commissioner Wilson?
This falls under the overlay district?
No, sir, it is not in the overlay district, in the highway corridor overlay.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Commissioner Clemens?
I just wanted everybody to say what they're going to say. I actually went out, and I think this is the last piece of property in this area that's residential, and it's 1 acre. And I agree with Commissioner Thomas that we need to look at setting a precedence to upgrade properties that are in this area. It looks horrible in this area. So I'm prepared to make a recommendation that we accept the applicant's proposal for the comp plan, and then we'll deal with the zoning to make sure that we get what we need in this area on the next request. But I want to set a development precedence in this area that will bring value to this property. And it's not about the applicant, it's about this 1 acre of property in this area. And I think that that's what we have to look. We have to stop looking at that and make sure that whatever goes there, whether this applicant is there or not, that we set a precedence of what do we want on this 1 acre of land on a corner. I definitely wouldn't want to put a residential home on this 1 acre of a corner around everybody else, because what are they going to build when you got a truck stop on one side, a sod farm on the other side? So I agree that it needs to be commercial, and what type of commercial and whether it should comply with the overlay. I think all of those are important things that we need to look at. But I want to make a motion that we accept the applicant's comp amendment request for this particular zoning, and then we'll deal with the zoning on the next one.
Okay, well, we have a motion and a second. Are there any further questions or comments? All in favor of that motion? Any opposed? Okay, so that was 5-1. Thank you.
I am gracious. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll now move into the next item, which is related regarding the Fleur Grady requesting a rezoning from residential home or manufactured homes to C3, which is highway commercial. And this property, too, is located, as stated, at the northwest intersection of Karl Parker Road and Old Highway 3 North in District 2. So we'll, again, welcome the presentation from Ms. Nieves.
Okay, good evening again.
Good evening.
The rezoning case before you is a request to rezone the property located at the northwest corner of Karl Parker Road and Old Highway 3 from RMH, mobile or manufactured homes, to C3, highway commercial, for the purpose of developing a craft, manufacturing, and retail store. The use, as proposed by the applicant through the letter of intent, does not require C3 zoning, as it is permissible in both the C1, neighborhood commercial, and C2, general commercial zoning districts. C3 is the most intense commercial zoning district in the county, and properties with the C3 zoning are meant to be located at locations which provide for the highest level of access to regional highways and major transportation systems. Through the Henry County Functional Road Classification, which is detailed in our comprehensive plan, Karl Parker Road is classified as a local road, and Old Highway 3, while it has the name highway, is not a state highway, and it's classified as an arterial. The nearest commercial zoned property is C2 to the east of the subject property, which appears to be developed as a partially vacant lot with industrial and some utility use. There are other commercial zoned properties, which are all located on the east side of Karl Parker Road, but they have not been developed as such. They are all currently developed as single-family homes. Although the previous case, which concerned the comprehensive plan amendment for medium-density residential to commercial, has been approved, those aforementioned commercial properties to the north and east of Karl Parker Road are not expected to develop as commercial properties as by our future land use map. On January 29th, 2019, staff took to the Zoning Advisory Board a recommendation of denial due to the rezoning's request inconsistency with our future land use map. The Zoning Advisory Board recommended denial of the request consistent with staff's recommendations. With that being said, staff recommends denial, and I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Okay, are there any questions or comments before we begin the public hearing? Commissioner Barham?
Yes, you mentioned that C1 would do everything that she wants to do.
Yes, Commissioner Barham, that is correct.
Okay, and will she be required to put the curbing in from the building department, the asphalt, everything just like a business?
Yes, sir, that's correct. As per ULDC requirements and Henry County Department of Transportation. I will say that we did receive comments from Henry County DOT, and they said that due to the right-of-way constraints on Karl Parker Road, that they would recommend only a deceleration taper, not a deceleration or acceleration lane.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay. Hearing none, okay, we'll begin the public hearing at this time. So again, anyone wishing to speak in favor, including the applicant, will you please come forward? There will be a collective time of 10 minutes, and likewise for those that are wishing to speak in opposition.
Good evening again, Commissioners.
Good evening.
Any suggestions would be great. As I stated earlier, I was very ignorant to the fact of going after something so vast, so big, so complicated as a C3. So any suggestions, anything will be great.
Okay, thank you. Again, this is a public hearing, so we'll allow anyone else to speak in favor, and then I'll invite you back as the applicant. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Hearing none, seeing none. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition, again, will be granted a collective time of 10 minutes.
Again, I would like to say, why do we have a land use map if we're not going to follow it? Why do we have a zoning board and planning group if we're not going to follow their recommendations? There's plenty of commercial properties in the area that could be used. That property butts up to residential property on the backs and the sides. And if you grant it for one group, you're going to have to do it again later on somewhere else in the county or further down the road. You're going to set a precedent. And I don't think that's going to be good for the county or the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Hearing none, seeing none, that concludes our public hearing. We invite the applicant to return. Again, any questions or comments from the board?
I have a question for staff. With this not being in the intent of the highway overlay corridor, what do we need to do? Would we have to do the highway corridor overlay for the whole area, or can we put that specifically on this parcel?
You can specifically say, or condition this track if it pleases the Board of Commissioners to meet the intent of the highway corridor overlay district.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, the floor is now open for a motion.
I would like to make a motion that we deny the applicant's request for C3 for this particular property, but that we would approve the rezoning to a C1 neighborhood zoning for this 1.23 acres, conditioning it to the corridor overlay district.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor of that motion with the conditions? Any opposed? Okay.
Awesome.
It approves 5-1. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. We're now moving to our next public hearing, and this is regarding COMP AM 1805, Jean Morris requesting a comprehensive plan amendment for property located west of 3248 Highway 81 West, and this is in District 2. So at this time, we'll invite Mr. Stacy Jordan Rudisil up for the presentation.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening.
Commissioners. The request before you tonight is located very close to the intersection of Old Highway 3 and the realignment of Highway 81. As indicated on this aerial, the subject property is outlined in green, and please notice that the realignment of Highway 81 goes right through the middle of the subject property. This tax map may show it a little clearer. Again, the subject property is outlined in green. and it shows the realignment of Highway 81 directly through the subject property. The zoning of the subject property is RM, residential multifamily, and you can also see that there is precedence for commercial in this area. So immediately to the west, there's property that's zoned C2, C3, and then to the south on Old Highway 3, there's property that's zoned C1. The future land use map, which is the subject of this hearing, and again, in the next request, we'll talk about the actual rezoning request. We'll note that the subject property is zoned a high-density residential, which is in keeping with the subject property's current zoning of residential multifamily. Initially, staff's recommendation was for denial of the applicant's request, but it was brought to our attention that when the comprehensive plan was put together, that we didn't note the fact that public sewer is not available in this area and on to the east of the railroad tracks, which approximates the rail line. So what that would mean is that if this subject property were to be connected with sewer, that sewer line would have to be run over the ridge, which means it would have to be pumped, which besides the distance may not be feasible for the development of the subject property. Staff recognized the good sense of that, and so we did amend our recommendation, and so we do recommend approval of the applicant's request to change the future land use map from high-density residential to commercial. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Okay. We've heard the presentation. Are there any questions before we begin the public hearing? Okay, we'll begin the public hearing. So at this time, we'll invite anyone up who's wishing to speak in favor, including the applicant. And again, we'll be given a total collective time of 10 minutes, and likewise for those who are in opposition for 10 minutes as well.
Gene Morris, 228 Shorewood Court, McDonough, Georgia. Madam Chairman, members of the board, it's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. The request is exactly as Stacy described it. This is some property I accumulated about 25 years ago. I have, at that time, it was in the land use plan as commercial. I also own 7 acres joining it to the east that has some rental houses on it. So the only houses that are adjacent to it that would be impacted on that side, I own the houses, and I'm in favor, of course, of the zoning. It is basically between C3 zoned property to the east and west on the new alignment of Highway 81, and I feel like it's a reasonable request. When the county determined in the SPLOST program to realign this intersection, it took about 1.5 acres of land through the middle of my property, and I was in support of it because I felt like it's something that would be good for West Henry County, and I think it has been. Y'all did a really good project there, and I think it's dramatically improved the appearance of the area and the traffic flow in that part of the county. But I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Well, thank you. This is a public hearing, so we'll allow time for anyone else who wishes to speak in favor, and we'll invite you back up as the applicant. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Seeing none. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, that now concludes our public hearing. We invite the applicant to come back to address any questions or comments from the board. So are there any questions or comments from the board at this time? Commissioner Clemens?
I have a question. Mr. Morris, what's the intended purpose of zoning this to commercial? What are you planning to do with it?
I plan to market the property.
To do what?
To market, to sell the property.
Okay.
It's in the Highway Corridor Overlay District, so it will be held to the high standards of the Highway Corridor Overlay District as far as the 10-foot paved sidewalk, the lights, the trees, the architectural controls. I think whatever goes in on this property will be a significant improvement to the appearance and quality of the area.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay. Hearing none, the floor is now open for a motion for approval regarding this comprehensive plan amendment.
I move to approve the change of the comprehensive plan amendment.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions or comments? All in favor? Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move into the next item, which is related to the property that was just discussed, and this is regarding RZ 1824. Gene Morris requesting a rezoning from multifamily residential to C3 highway commercial for the property located west of 3248 Highway 81 West in District 2. So, Mr. Rudisell, we invite you again for the presentation.
Thank you, Chair Wood, Commissioners. This is the rezoning request, which is associated with our previous request for a change in the comprehensive plan future land use map. And I would just note that the subject property, as it's indicated in your exhibit books and also on the overhead, is now planned for commercial land uses. And so the applicant's request for C3 is supported by our newly amended future land use map. The zoning map, as it's illustrated in your exhibit books and also on the overhead, is indicated, outlined in green. Its current zoning is RM, residential multifamily. Again, as we stated in the previous hearing, it's not feasible to develop it as an apartment complex, otherwise residential multifamily, in part because it has now been bisected by a state highway. Also, the sewer service is not readily available. It's not required to tap into sewer. Also, I would reiterate, as it was mentioned in the previous hearing, that it is located within the Highway Corridor Overlay District, and so that will govern a lot of the aesthetic characteristics of the development, however it develops. The applicant is requesting a C3, Highway Commercial Zoning District, for the purpose of marketing the property, which means that there is no specific use that is being envisioned or proposed for the subject property. That being said, the Zoning Advisory Board at their hearing on January the 24th recommends approval. Staff also recommends approval of the applicant's request.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board before we begin the public hearing? Okay, we will now enter into the public hearing. So at this time, we'll invite anyone wishing to speak in favor, including the applicant, and we'll be given a total of 10 minutes for the group of those that would be speaking. And likewise, those speaking in opposition, that group will be given a total of 10 minutes. Good evening.
Gene Morris, 228 Shorewood Court, McDonough, Georgia. Again, Board, I do ask your consideration of this request. The property is bisected by the realignment of Highway 81. It is in the Highway Corridor Overlay District, and it is located between C3 properties to the east and west. It's so precedent is there, and feel like it's a reasonable request.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Seeing none, is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Please come forward now. Seeing none, that concludes our public hearing. So we invite the applicant to please come forward now and address any questions or comments from the board. So board, are there any questions or comments that we have? Okay, Commissioner Clemens.
Mr. Morris, with the property here, and there is a precedence with C3, would you be, because you're not going to develop it and you're going to sell it, I would be concerned about the person that's coming behind you that buys the property, and there's, looks like residents on the back side of the west side and then residents across on the other side. Would you be opposed to a condition to have not allow truck parking there?
Yes. I would agree to that.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions or comments from the board? Okay. Hearing none, the floor is now open for a motion.
Move to approve with adding the condition of prohibited truck parking as a use of this property.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any other comments or thoughts? All in favor? It passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We're now moving to the next item, which is a public hearing for RZ 1821. The Reservoir Group is requesting a rezoning from RA, or residential agriculture, to residential suburban for property located on the north side of Miller's Mill Road in District 4. And we invite Ms. Nieves back up for a presentation.
Good evening again, Chair and board members.
Good evening again.
The applicant is requesting to rezone the subject property located on the north side of Miller's Mill Road near Springdale Drive, from RA Residential Agricultural to RS Residential Suburban for a single-family residential and condominium development. Since the Zoning Advisory Board meeting in January, the applicant has since submitted a new site plan which demonstrates compliance with all applicable local and federal regulations, including the FAA, and I'll place that on the screen now. As per the new site plan, the number of total proposed dwelling units has been reduced from 385 to 371, consisting of 309 single-family units and 62 condominiums. The open space has also increased from 98.2 acres, or 52.5%, to 100.8 acres, or 54% of the total acreage of the site. The development as now proposed by the applicant has a density of 5.06 dwelling units per net acre. This is supported by the subject property's future land use designation of medium density residential, which allows for up to 6 dwelling units per net acre. On January 24th, 2019, staff took to the Zoning Advisory Board a recommendation of approval with 8 conditions. The Zoning Advisory Board recommended approval with an additional condition concerning the redesign of the site plan in accordance with ULD standards. Staff has no objections to the changes made to the development since the Zoning Advisory Board meeting and their recommendation. However, we have evaluated those conditions as originally approved by the Zoning Advisory Board, and we would recommend a small adjustment to Condition 5 so that there's no contradiction between Condition 5 and the other conditions. This change is italicized on the conditions I'm going to place on the overhead, and it should be italicized within your exhibit books. So you can see the change in number 5, which we've added to, we've changed the date of the site plan to reflect the new site plan, and we've added the wording except as otherwise conditioned. And I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Okay, are there any questions or comments before we begin the public hearing? Okay, we'll now begin the public hearing. So at this time, we invite up anyone who's wishing to speak in favor, including the applicant, to please come forward, and you will be granted a collective time of 10 minutes for all that are wishing to speak in favor. And likewise, the same 10 minutes will be given to those wishing to speak in opposition.
Good evening, Chair Wood, members of the board. My name is Steve Moore, Moore Bass Consulting, 1350 Keys Ferry Court, McDonough, Georgia. Here tonight representing the Reservoir Group in this rezoning request. As Ms. Nieves said, 187 acres on the north side of Miller's Mill Road. Last month, during the public hearing, there were several, I guess back in January, for the Zoning Advisory Board hearing, there was several concerned citizens that spoke about the project in various capacities, but a large majority of the comments seem to be related to the proximity of the existing runway at Berry Hill Airport and the subject property. Based on the feedback we received during that meeting, we hired the services of a company called Audic Engineering Incorporated out of Atlanta, Georgia, to perform a airspace study, basically, of the subject property. That report was complete, and as a result, they identified, I have to zoom back in here, but they identified a section of adjacent to the existing runway that's shaded in this pink color here, that is the runway protection zone. And within that zone, there's very little, if any, type of development that could occur. So as you can see, that's overlaid on the previous version of the master plan. That RPZ shows up on this master plan right here. So that same polygon shape that was on the previous map shows up right there. That area is required to be free of any building structures, transportation uses, anything that would be a public gathering space. Parks, ball fields, nothing can be in that. It is intended to be just an area that is a protection zone. So the RPZ is naturally bordered right now by a large row of trees that exists here. Those trees with this revised master plan are intended to remain as is to further continue to buffer the airport, critical zones associated with the airport from the residential development. In addition to that study, we also had some wetland delineation work done, some more investigation works on the site itself just to further refine the layout. And based on that study, as well as this airspace study, we have come up with a master plan that you see before you tonight that is a reduction in total lots and a reduction in total density, and we believe accommodates all of those concerns. We had the opportunity to meet with a representative of Berry Hill Airport today, actually, and they presented several concerns and conditions that they would like imposed or amended to the zoning conditions that we are happy with, and I can present those now if it's okay. Hopefully we can zoom into these in the middle section of this letter that documents these. But I'll read it if it's okay. Just says the development's construction, occupancy, and usage shall comply with FAA AC 150 5313A and FAA memorandum dated September 12, 2012, interim guidance on land uses within a runway protection zone as further described in the attached Aulick Engineering LLC report dated 2/15 of 19, which is the report we provided. The final subdivision plat shall depict the runway protection zone in accordance with FAA AC 150 5313A and the FAR Part 77 approach slope and the extended runway centerline and flight path. Hey, that's great. Developer and subsequent sellers shall disclose the proximity of the adjacent airport and the expectation of low-flying aircraft and accompanying aircraft noise in any purchase or sale agreement, as well as covenants and restrictions for the community. And 4, runway protection zone shall be fenced and marked with appropriate signage. And 5, the existing stand of trees at the end of the RPZ designated on the project master plan will remain. Any new construction work within the said RPZ will meet FAA requirements stated above. So with that being said, again, the layout, similar in nature, slight modifications just based on those changes. We're proposing 2 entrances. I think the prior layout had 3. The western or the easternmost entrance lines up, enters the 60-foot wide or 62-foot wide lots. This entrance would access through the 90-foot product, and then there's 2 pods of 75-foot products here, essentially offering us the ability to provide separate individual communities within an overall community. From that central roundabout area, there's a section of age-targeted, maintenance-free cottages. Those are intended, again, as an age-targeted community, would be fee simple, tucked right around the lake, which we think is an ideal location for them. It would be graded flat, obviously, to attract that market. Very well done, maintenance-free, lawns taken care of, maintenance on the outside of the buildings taken care of. They'll have their own separate amenity center as well that would be catered towards that market. There's a large amenity center proposed. Originally, the amenity center was at the back of this lake, and based on some of the wetlands work we had done, it was a challenge to get to it, so we've actually relocated the amenity center here, and then we've added, left the multi-use ball field back here, and in addition, we've provided walking trails that will traverse approximately 100 acres of open space. The density, again, as Ms. Nieves said, is 5.3 or 4 is what we had in the original application. It actually has reduced with the revised master plan. But I wanted to just bring one point that of our open space, approximately 50 acres of our open space is highly developable, high and dry property. If you were to take that area and incorporate that into your net developable area calculation, we're closer to 3 units per acre, which is much lower. But again, it's good developable property. We're just choosing to dedicate it as open space. With that said, we believe our proposal meets the intent of the county's vision with the land use plan. We received the unanimous approval from the Zoning Advisory Board. We believe we've tried to be good stewards and good neighbors to the neighboring community. And with that, I'll take any questions, or I understand it's a public hearing, so I'll sit down and save my time for any additional questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor to please come forward? Okay. At this time, we'll grant a total of 10 minutes for those wishing to speak in opposition to please come forward. Please state your name, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Matt West, and I live at 155 Kitty Hawk Drive in the Berry Hill Airport. And I had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Moore and Mr. Camp this morning. First and foremost, my concern has been and remains the ability of the airport to remain good neighbors with the surrounding areas. We proposed the zoning conditions contained in the letter this morning. Unfortunately, we didn't get them to you in time to make it part of the petition. The owners of the airport and the developer have agreed to these proposed zoning conditions, and we request that they be added to the resolution. We obviously remain very concerned about the density and the appropriateness of the high density to the area. However, we feel these conditions will protect the interest of both the airport and of the development. I'll be available for any questions you have for the airport.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward.
Commissioners, thank you. My name is Tom Baxter. I live in the Kitty Hawk subdivision, and I just wanted to reiterate on the plan here. The density is such that with the airport on one side and the community center and athletic fields on the other, that density doesn't really conform to the Miller's Mill corridor. And I understand the land development plan does the future density is noted in that, but I do feel like that density lends itself to not really being compatible with the other developments along Miller's Mill Road, and I hope that's considered.
Thank you. Okay, the young ladies, she's been, if you can come forward, because she's been coming, and then we'll allow the gentleman behind you. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Rhonda Ross. I live in Indian Creek subdivision, which would be to the right of that, I guess. But I've been there for 30 years, and I just feel that the traffic coming from Springdale, we have the ball fields, the recreation department there and everything, that already creates a good bit of traffic. When you add in 371 more homeowners in that area, what are they going to do about the traffic? Because, you know, getting out of Springdale sometimes now to go over the East Lake Parkway in the afternoons, it's very crowded. And also, what about the schools? You know, they're already crowded now. That's going to make even more, you know, children in the schools. I am also a realtor, so of course, you know, I do like development, but I'm just thinking about the density, the traffic, the schools, adding to that, you know, to Miller's Mill Road. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Wayne Ray. I'm here tonight with my wife, Barbara Ray. We reside at 3 Cessna Lane and have lived there for 35 years. And it's just very close to this complex that's going to be going in here. So I'm against the rezoning, any rezoning for this property. And the reason why is, if you notice the Mosley Park Sporting Complex right here, my wife and I live way back over here just on the west side of this proposed property. And, you know, it's a noise situation that we're dealing with. Now, from about this time of the year, March through the end of October, there's sporting events that are going on out there continuously. Saturday and Sunday from about 10 in the morning till 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, and through the week from about 6 p.m. till 11 p.m. sometimes the lights are on. The noise pollution is just unbelievable. And we live about, less than a half a mile, probably about a half a mile from that. Now you can see here the Mosley Park is right up against the fence line here on this property. Now if you look at this scale over here, this is 100 feet right here. You can see that soccer field is less than 100 feet away from that property line. You can imagine the quality of life those people are going to have listening to all that sporting activity 7 days a week for probably 8 months out of the year. So for that reason alone, I request you deny any zoning whatsoever of that property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Damon Kennedy, and I live in McKenzie Station subdivision. I've lived there for 11 years. My daughters attend Woodland Elementary School. And from the January Zone Advisory Board meeting, I'll quote from the report from that meeting. Correspondence received from the Henry County Board of Education dated November 4, 2018, states that the schools serving the proposed development are Pleasant Grove Elementary, Woodland Middle, and Woodland High. At the time this letter was written, the proposed number of dwelling units was 340, which as of the meeting today, it's been elevated to 371. With 340 proposed dwelling units, the proposed development will generate an estimated additional 680 students. Again, that number is now elevated for the schools collectively based upon 340 lots proposed. At this time, there are no modular classrooms on site at Pleasant Grove Elementary, Woodland Middle, and Woodland High. According to the correspondence, the additional students would result in a need for 27.2 additional classrooms collectively. The projected capital improvement costs are $25,000 per modular classroom and $300,000 per permanent classroom. So this kind of goes back to what we've been talking about all night in opposition to some of these developments. The planning committee, if their job is to plan, and we know up front that this is going to have an adverse effect on the schools, on the traffic, then I think it needs to be opposed. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board.
Good
My
evening.
name is Karl Avery, and I live in the Meadows at Miller's Mills. I've been living there for 10 years. We are located just on the other side of Mosley Park. I'm opposed to this because this new community is not conducive to any other community on Miller's Mills. No other community is that large. A lot of us sought out our floor plans because our generation brought our parents to live with us. In my community, a lot of our elderly live with their children. We picked this location because it's close to the hospital and the clinics. Our parents still drive. They're still capable of driving, but the amount of traffic on that road will be kind of dangerous for them out there. Furthermore, this community building right next to Mosley Park with the trail that's connect to the park lead easy access into our community because Mosley Park Trail goes around the back of our community and around the back of our homes. It has the potential to raise the crime rate. We have people walking up and down Miller's Mills safely. They be running out there. To add all that traffic will be dangerous to everybody out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Karen Grine, and this is my husband, Derek Grine. We are also residents of Miller's Mill. There's a reason why we moved out in this particular area, because initially we were out by Highway 675 and Exit 2. We moved over into this community, one, because of the fact that it wasn't that congested. single-lane roads, and you're proposing 340-plus dwellings scares me. I'm out there in the morning with my child and the bus, and it is already congested because of the amount of bus stops that occur on Miller's Mill first thing in the morning. Also, I concur with my neighbor about the amount of foot traffic we're getting in our backyards. Now that it's getting warmer, I hear more people in my backyard because of the trail that is there. So that concerns me the most. Also, the amount of kids now you're proposing to fill up our schools. There was a reason why I chose Woodland High School for my child and Pleasant Grove, because it is not overpopulated at this time. My children enjoy that, and that's one of the things I look forward to. And this scares me as a parent that you're putting modulars. I work in DeKalb County school system as a teacher, and it is horrendous to have these modulars that are being proposed. And it scares me that you're going to put modulars in these schools. So I hope you choose not to agree to this development.
And my addition, I'd just like to see the traffic study, the intersection. I think one of the neighbors in the community already mentioned the intersection of Springdale Road and Miller's Mill.
Okay. So thank you. We'll make that, and we'll make a note of the individual that was standing behind you as well. So that concludes our public hearing. So at this time, we'll invite the applicant back up for any questions or comments by the board. So at this time, the floor is open for any questions or comments from the board.
I just want to make some comments, Madam Chair, in reference to this and maybe propose a couple of questions. There has been countless emails and phone calls I have received from this particular area concerning this subdivision. And I too have taken the time to go out and meet with the residents of the airport and the owners of the runway there to determine how we can best put together a subdivision that will represent and complement the area in that particular area. I've taken the time to ride through the different cotton field subdivisions and other subdivisions in that area as well. In reference to a couple of comments I heard tonight, for the school system and overcrowding the school system and putting modulars at the school system, that does not come from this board. The school system is charged, just as we are, to do smart growth and development and determine how to best develop their school areas for growth in particular areas. So I really do ask you to go over to the Board of Education and voice your concerns about growth in particular areas and how they plan to manage that. In addition to that, this particular developer has been and met with me twice, and I think we probably changed this layout at least twice to try to accommodate the areas in that particular area. Now, if you think about it, there was a study done to make sure that this subdivision does complement what can happen in the area of an airport. That has been done, and they have met and in certain cases exceeded that in the design of this particular subdivision. The second thing is that I put forth to them that we don't just build houses, we build communities. And in doing so, we have enhanced the green area in this particular subdivision by 50% almost, to make sure not only do you come home, but you come home to a community that gives back in the form of clean air and walking trails. In addition to that, we have about 3, I think, retention ponds in this particular subdivision. And I have asked them to look at these retention ponds and make sure that they're environmentally friendly. So you don't just have holes in your subdivision, but you will have environmentally friendly retention ponds in that particular area. There is a lake out here. They were not required to do anything to enhance that area, but now they have designed around that area to make sure the lake complements the area as well. Yes, this is next to Mosley Park, and the goal is to attract families and children who will enjoy the park area as well that's next to it. So we've done a lot to make sure that this subdivision will not just be houses, but it will be a community. We've looked at the entrances, and we've changed the way the entrances will be, where we'll welcome the community and welcome people home when they come home in the afternoon or when they leave during the day. when it comes down to the flow in the subdivision, we've looked at how to put in the roundabouts and the half roundabouts to give a sense of comfort. The homes in this particular area, would you tell this community what would be the price ranges of the home in the particular area here?
Yes, ma'am. The smallest of the products, which is the cottages, will be in the $200,000 to $250,000 range. The next largest would be the 62-foot wide lots. Those homes are estimated from 1,800 to 2,000 square feet, $250,000 to $285,000. The next largest is the 75-foot wide lots. Those are 2,000 to 2,400 square foot homes with $275,000 to $325,000 price tag. And then the largest lots, which are 90-foot lots, the homes will be 2,400 to 3,000 square feet, $325,000 to $400,000 houses.
We have also, and I've taken the time to speak with a broker in the area, a real estate broker who knows this area quite well, and it has been determined that in that particular area, homes are selling from $346,000, and some of them top out at $386,000. This subdivision would add value to the communities that are there. In addition, it comes with full sanitations and sewer and everything that's needed. So,
please do not interrupt her, please. Thank you.
now, what I am trying to say is that we have taken the time to make sure we complement what's there. And in addition to that, the upgrades that are being proposed by this particular developer will have the ability to have soundproof roofing available as upgrades in the homes as well. So, after meeting with the community, and the developer met with the community, he's agreed to these stipulations in the letter that you all brought forth as well. After taking the time to see how we can complement the communities around us and building quality homes, I see that we do, and I'm asking this board to approve the subdivision for approval.
So we've heard a question or comment from Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Wilson.
Yes, I've spent 10 years of my life over there off of Mills Mill Road. I lived there, and I've seen it develop to where it is today. There's about eight subdivisions between Kitty Hawk and 155. And I believe all those subdivisions are from a R1 to R3. So with that being said, I would support R3 in this area, nothing more than that. That's all I have.
All right, questions or other questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, the floor is now open for a motion.
I move that this subdivision be approved for this particular area as laid out in the current plan that they proposed to us.
With the conditions that...
With the conditions that I've outlined, there are conditions that have been placed upon them as staff, and all those will be part of the report going forward as well.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Are there further questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move into the next item, which is a public hearing RZ 1819, which is H.H. Evans Family Trust requesting a rezoning from M2 Heavy Manufacturing to C2 General Commercial for the property located at 549 Highway 1941 in District 2. And we'll give a moment as they're exiting. Okay, you may begin the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Wood. The subject property before you tonight is located near the intersection of Highway 1941 and Upper Woolsey Road. Indicated on the overhead, the subject property is outlined in green. On the tax map, it may be more clear to see that the subject property is in the middle of two other properties. One is at the very corner of Upper Woolsey Road in 1941. The other has frontage along 1941. These two parcels are owned by the same family. And these two parcels, as you'll see on the zoning map, these properties are already zoned C2. This property that's before you tonight was rezoned from C2 back in 1997 to M2 for the specific use of manufacturing concrete. So they're coming back before you at this time to zone back from M2 to C2. The purpose, and this may be addressed more easily by the applicant, they've indicated that the purpose is for the rental of vehicles, and I believe he specified U-Haul vehicles. Future land use map calls for mixed use. This entire area that's indicated in the lavender shows a mixed use land use designation. The site plan that's a part of your exhibit books and also indicated in the overhead, it shows 2 buildings on the subject property. And again, this subject property is in between 2 other parcels that are owned by the applicant. On January the 10th, the Zoning Advisory Board held a hearing and they did recommend approval. Staff also recommends approval of the applicant's request, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions from the board before the public hearing? Okay, hearing none at this time, we'll welcome anyone wishing to speak in favor of this zoning matter, including the applicant.
Hi, I'm Luke Evans. I'm the brother of Thomas Evans, who is in charge of the family trust. I don't have anything further at this time, but I'm here to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, considering this is a public hearing, we'll see if there's anyone else wishing to speak in favor, and we'll invite you back after the public hearing. Thank you as the applicant. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Hearing none. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition, you will be granted a total of 10 minutes. Okay. Seeing none, this concludes the public hearing. We do invite the applicant to please come forward now to address any questions with staff from the board. At this time, are there any questions from the board?
I have a question.
Okay, Commissioner Clemens.
I have a question for staff in reference to truck parking. With this zoning like this, with C2 and the overlay, would it be allowed to have truck parking here?
No, Commissioner. The truck parking would not be allowed. C2 does not allow for outside storage. It does allow for the rental of vehicles, but it does not allow for outside storage, such as truck parking.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay. Hearing none, the floor is now open for a motion.
Move to approve the applicant's request from M2 heavy manufacturing to C2 general commercial.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Are there any further questions or comments? All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
It passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Well, that concludes all of our planning and zoning matters for this evening, and at this time, we'll now enter into the public comment section, and this is the time we usually allow citizens to voice their county-related concerns if they sign up prior to the meeting with the county clerk. Were there any public comments this evening?
Yes, Chair, there are 4 people signed up tonight for public comment: Tim Colbreth, Tony Pilgrim, Alicia Menace, and John Page.
Well, thank you. If you will please come in that order, and each individual will be granted a total of 5 minutes for their public comments.
My name's Tim Colbreth. I've lived in this county for over 50 years. And I've sat here tonight, I've heard these people talk about stipulations from the board. If you do this, we'll do this. Sort of like used to be a gentleman's handshake. But unfortunately today we can't have that. We have to have contracts. We have to have things that are binding. Well, before you tonight, this right here is not my words. This is the county. This is county employees. This is county paid people from my tax dollars. As you can see what I have highlighted here, the stipulations, it says at the top, approved. With the stipulations from the county of having a notice, which is this right here, a week prior, and also in this contract, it says what will be done. Again, this is not my verbiage, this is the county. Now, me and Mr. Pilgrim was in this meeting. At no given time did anybody tell us at any time that the commissioners were going to have to vote on this. At any time. We have not received notification. We have not received letters. And I'm sure if there's one on file, it would have been a letter. Even a legal lawyer would have sent a letter that had to be signed for. We've not received it. So tonight I ask for a revote because of the fact that, you know, like I said, at the meeting, we had no one tell us. The fire department was there. The police department was there. The Parks and Rec was there. They told us what we were supposed to do. They told us we need notification, okay? They pulled the map out. They showed us what road to notify. Then they asked about the firing. What will be used? We told them it's all black powder, no live fire, no projectiles. Okay, we need to know that. This came from the county. Now, unfortunately, I'm not a highly educated man. I've spent my life 33 years driving a truck, and I'm proud to have done so. But I can tell you there's some educated people here tonight that will tell you, whether you want to call it a permit, whether you want to call it an agreement, whatever you want to call it, it's a contract. And there's some educated people here that will tell you that if this contract is voided, if we voided this contract, then we are liable to Henry County. If you void this contract, you're liable to us. And that sets Henry County for some lawsuits. I don't appreciate this, and just for the record, there's another statement that was made back in high school and little kids. It's called two-face. Well, some of you on this board tonight who voted, and I have proof, anybody who wants to see this after this meeting, please, I beg you to come to me. I have proof that states I don't have a dog in this fight on behalf of not only themselves, but speaking on behalf of another commissioner. I don't have a dog in this fight. Nash Farms is a non-issue to us. Well, if it's a non-issue, what are you doing voting? If it's a non-issue, your vote don't count. You said you didn't have a dog in this fight. I lost my dad 2 years ago. My dad always told me, speak the truth. Stand up, be ready to face it. If you've done wrong, face it. Speak the truth. Well, I'm facing you tonight, and I'm telling you, if you got a problem with anything that I said, let's talk about it. But don't be two-faced to this county because, see, now you're setting yourself up that we can't believe anything you say. And so, again, I ask you, this is a contract.
Thank you,
Please
sir.
give us a revote.
Your time has expired. Thank you.
My name is Tony Pilgrim. I've actually been in front of you before. You know, tonight I come with a little bit of optimism and a little bit of pessimism, but of course my pessimism ran out. You know, I just want to reiterate what my colleague said there. A permit is to give authorization or consent to do something, to grant permission, allow liberty to do something, an authoritative or official certificate of permission. Now, if you can show me anywhere in this contract where it says anything about going before the board to get permission to use Canon, which is obviously noted here, if you can show me in this contract, which I know y'all have a copy of, where it says that, then I digress. But if you can't, we have legal authority to do what we need to do. So I also ask for a revote tonight. We've been doing this for 11 years. We've never had a problem until the usual suspects come in. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good evening. Can you state your name, please? Good evening.
Commissioners, my name is Alicia Menace. I'm here on behalf of Eagles Lake Homeowners Association. I serve as its HOA president, and Mr. Wilson is our district representative, and you all should have already received emails from me. Last year, maybe by the end of 2017, our lake, we have a lake within our community, and put that here. I don't know where you can zoom in. Our lake began to dry up. That was the end of 2017. We have neighbors. We have 181 houses within our subdivision, Eagles Lake, which is located across from Phillips Drive, Bridges Road. We're in that center. And I confronted our district representative back then, which is no longer here, but they said, well, after the rains, the water come up. Well, the waters didn't come up. It dried up. We lost the fish. We lost a lot of the animal life that was in there. Stench began to accumulate. The neighbors began to fuss, and they came to our annual meeting and asked the board what we were going to do about it. And that's when I cried for help from the Board of Commissioners. What can you all do to help us out? I contacted the Henry County Stormwater, the Water Department, all kind of agencies to see what we could do, come up with a resolution. Well, we found out that this community is like almost 25 years old, and whatever pipes or whatever the corrugated pipes that was built in here, I will assume by the Henry County Water Department, they had corroded and rusted, causing a big gap hole to develop. And we went in and we employed someone to come and help repair, put a bandage on this to save our lake, because we wanted the lake. So this is this year. I don't know whether you can see this. Okay. The rains came, the waters came. January, February of this year, when the rains came, we had a storm, the accumulation of rain. It filled our water. The piping was secured in so much that it caused flooding. And the flooding came so bad that it flooded over into our community lake, not lake, pool. This is our swimming pool. It came over and we had it covered in it. You could see the lake in the background. That's our pool, our community swimming pool. That's flood water. Well, not only did that happen, we had some uninvited residents to come aboard. 5 of them, 45 pounds plus. And when they came, we had to hire a service, predator service to come. And they removed these, they trapped them and they removed them. Well, not only did they come, and I can't tell you how they came, whether they was an inlet from waters, whatever, woods was cut down, well, whatever the case was, when they came, they stopped up our spillway dam. And this is some of their work that they did. And this is our spillway dam, the lid of our cemented spillway dam. They cut down woods, they stopped it up. The picture on the left is a hole where the water, they stopped up our dam, and then now it's a hole in the water. What I'm asking the county to do before my time expires is we can get a guarded rail around our spillway to keep these predators out, or I've contacted the stormwater, Ramiro, to come. He walked the grounds with me. We need some help, because if not, the dam is gonna break and you're gonna have more flooding of our community over Bridges Road, and we're gonna have a tremendous problem. So I'm here on behalf of Eagles Lake to inquire what can be done, what you all can help us do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
By the way, those beavers.
Okay, I think we have one other person for public comment.
John Page was the last speaker. He may have left.
Okay. If Mr. Page is not here, that then concludes our public comment section for this evening. We'll now move into the next agenda item, which is the approval of the minutes for the March 5th regular Board of Commissioners meeting. Were there any changes or revisions to those minutes? Hearing none, the floor is now open for a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion for approval.
Second.
And a second. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Okay, the minutes are unanimously approved. We at this time will open the floor to any commissioner comments. Are there any commissioner comments at this time? Commissioner Barnes?
Yes, I've got a couple questions. I would like to see if Ron Burkhalter could give us an update on Lakedale Road. I'm getting a lot of phone calls about that, and so if he could give us an update and let us know where we're at with that.
Board, Lakedale Road, we've changed consultants. Earlier this week, Rocky and myself had a conference call with the new consultant. The approach that the new consultant is going is with reinforced concrete pipe, not the precast boxes that was the previous consultant. By the end of this week, we'll have the quantity, we'll have the pipe ordered. We have the pipe, this reinforced concrete pipe is going to be either 24 or 30 inch. It'll be multiple runs. We don't know exactly how many, but we'll know that information by the end of the week. We'll have that pipe ordered. That pipe is on county contract with Rinker, which is up on Rock Quarry Road. And Rocky's had conversations today, and he's had a conversation in the morning about lowering the lake. Okay, so we're going to lower the lake level, but we have to work in conjunction with the estates, because if we lower the lower lake, okay, we can't be putting water into from the upper lake down into the lower, but all that'll be worked out tomorrow. And while the lake is being lowered, we're going to have the pipe manufactured. And once the pipe manufactured, we're going to do the installation.
Ron, how low are you going to have to lower the lake over Lake Down North?
Right now, Commissioner, they're saying 6 feet. 6 feet is the, we went out and did shots, okay? And when we did the shots out there, there's a gas line. And what we're going to do, we can't put the 30-inch in because it might conflict with, so what we're going to do is put an extra 24-inch run in, adding more pipes, okay, to pass more volume of water, okay? And right now, that's the theoretical, but Commissioner, once we lower the lake, if we need to lower it another 6 inches, okay, we'll certainly do that. But right now, engineering-wise, that'll work.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
go ahead.
all for Ron. I've got.
Okay, Commissioner Barnes still has the floor.
Yeah, let me finish. I've got a question for Patrick Jogstetter. Patrick, you heard some of the public comments tonight and about this existing contract, and do we need to revisit this? What's your thoughts?
Well, it's obviously up to the board if you want to revisit it. I will tell you that the permit issue would not, I don't want to debate with anybody, but the permit itself did not grant any rights beyond what the ordinance allows. So even if a permit is issued by any government official, if it is in violation of an ordinance, it doesn't create any rights. It's troubling, I think it's bothersome that a permit was issued that authorized something that isn't allowed by the ordinance. That's troubling. But it doesn't that does not create any rights on behalf of the recipient of the permit. I do think it's troubling a little bit, but it doesn't create contractual rights in the regular sense. There's a lot of exceptions in Georgia law to when permits grant you rights, and one of those exceptions is a permit issued incorrectly, in error, whatever, however you want to call it, does not grant those rights.
Okay, excuse me. So.
That's all I have.
Okay, Commissioner Holmes.
That happened.
I'm sorry,
County
Commissioner
manager.
Wilson, you were next, I'm sorry.
Commissioner, can you all hear me? Okay. Commissioner Holmes and entire board, the Planning and Zoning Department is part of a 3-step process for this type of event. And so the department will review any special event permits that come forth, but I echo the same comments that Patrick's made in terms of the codes that are in place. Now, it's my understanding that there was a lot of conversation between our Parks and Rec director and the Planning and Zoning Department, and I've asked staff to pull all of that correspondence, which outlined what the process would be. I do have a copy of the minutes from the Parks and Rec Board, and I was hoping to be able to speak to that to see if there was any conversation regarding the board's approval. But the county code has been the county code for some time, and that's always been the process that the Board of Commissioners have to approve that element of the event. Now, with that said, there is still an approval to have the event. The only thing that this board was voting on was to allow for the use of the cannons and things of that nature. And so that's the only thing that the board was voting on. In terms of the event happening without that component, there is an approved permit for that.
Okay, Commissioner Wilson, and then we'll come to Commissioner Clements. Is it yours related to this or something else? Because it sounds like yours may be related. Okay.
So the event has been approved, so these people could come out to the site and still have the reenactment, but they can't use cannons and rifles.
That is
kind of like having a 4th of July show without fireworks at Nash Farms. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Okay, please just order.
But Commissioner,
board,
it's still the same process. If you're gonna have a
Same-
4th of
same
July,
process.
you would have to have the fireworks approved by this board as
So
well.
noise is noise where it's coming from
Excuse me,
fireworks.
sir. Only the board is speaking at this time. Thank you.
So noise is noise where it's coming from fireworks or a cannon. So, but I do have a question for Ron as well. On the lady on the beavers, have y'all followed up with her here last week? Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Clemens.
Chair, I would like for us to definitely look at that ordinance and create an ordinance that this doesn't happen again. If people go out and they advertise and they think that they've been approved, whether they could read it or not is just unfair. And if it should come before this board for any special events permits, and I would like for us to look at that, and that'll help from having these troublesome situations in the future. This could have been fireworks, and we voted against it. It would have been the same issue. So we need to make sure that everything comes before this board so that it's clear and cut.
I'm happy to draft that ordinance. I'd warn you, Tim's not here. I'm going to bet special events are approved pretty often, and you'll be, I don't know how many, but you may be asking for a lot more work that you may or may not want.
I think we need to deal with that because this happened with the special events with the wedding venues and all that stuff, and it's coming back and forth to us too many times. Especially if there's going to be a component that the commissioners have to approve. It should first get and we don't have to do all of them, but if it has to have a component where the commissioners approve, it should come to the commissioners first and then go to planning and zoning. Just let's take a look at the ordinance so that we can reduce having these type of troublesome situations.
Yeah, I can certainly, and I'll get with Dante and we'll review that process.
Okay, I saw Commissioner Wilson and Commissioner Barham.
So are we trying to get a new ordinance in place to keep a reenactment off of Nash Farms, or are we trying to do a new ordinance where we can regulate all the events in the county?
Read Webster's dictionary and read and listen to what I said. We didn't say anything about we did not say anything about a reenactment. We said that anybody that comes before this board and has to get a second opinion should get that first if this is going to stop it.
I heard exactly what you said, but this hadn't been an issue until they wanted to do a reenactment.
Okay, so what you want to do now? What you want to do now, Commissioner? Nothing.
Okay, Commissioner Wilson, are you done with your comments? Commissioner Barham has the floor now.
Yeah, you know, it's unfortunate. And I, for one, think we ought to take the fireworks and the explosive out of our hands. I think if anybody wants to have a special event and they want to rent our park, it ought to be policy-driven, not politically driven. And this is that's all I'm going to say.
Any other questions or comments?
I have one.
Commissioner Clemens.
One thing I want to know is why the chair didn't ask for residents and addresses. Is this a group that lives in Henry County or not? Are the people?
Excuse me. Let me first respond to that question.
Yeah.
First of all of the public comments are requested to identify their name and addresses when they sign in with the clerk. Okay. And I was consistent today, and actually it's something, I know we had an elected official that was speaking one time and they put their name and address, so I'm thinking about it from security purposes. Okay. So that information is available through the clerk. I've been consistent, at least today, I don't know, and I spoke to the county clerk that I was going to begin this for security purposes. So that's why I did not ask for addresses. I did ask for names, and that was consistent, even though some people gave that. Okay. So in response to that, that's my response.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, county manager, comments.
I have no comments at this time.
Chair, before you move on, if I could make one follow-up, maybe a question or a comment about revisiting the special events or the fireworks, or the only thing that concerns me about, or one of the things I want to address in the ordinance, is there are no standards whatsoever upon which you evaluate these applications. And that's a little troubling to me. The fact that it's just approve them or don't approve them is a little bit troubling. What would trouble me less is that there's simply a checklist, and if you check the boxes, you get your permits. If you don't check the boxes, you don't get your permits. But leaving the grant or denial of a permit to the board without any basis for why you grant or deny is problematic. It's the kind of thing that leaves the impression, true or not true, that you're making decisions based on bad information, no information, politics, whatever other thing may be supporting your decision. What I will likely present to you are some options, but all of those options will provide for things like fireworks, and there's 2 or 3 other things in our park ordinance that people have to come to you for permission for. What I will probably propose to you is a set of just objective standards that we walk down, we check a box. And if they check all the boxes, then they're simply entitled to the permits. That's how we do, and I know I'm in the getting close to the end of revising the alcoholic beverages things we talked about a month ago. But several years ago, they changed the permit to sell beer and wine to a check the box for precisely that reason. People were getting denied when they shouldn't have gotten denied, or we don't know why. Nobody knows why. And when you deny someone a permit, it's always better that we all know why we denied a permit. So you will likely see some objective standards, because I think that provides you with a level of protection against claims. It provides applicants with some predictability about what's going to happen, and that is always better for us. So we'll be working on that, because anytime I just can't sugarcoat it. A denial without a basis is it's a bad day for us. That's from the lawyer's standpoint. And I don't want to see that continue to happen, because we're always better off if we know why. So, right. Well, I think we need to know why from an objective standpoint. We need to check those boxes.
I can't see myself voting yes for a group affiliated with Nathan Bedford Forrest, 469. That's why I voted no.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, our next item is regarding the upcoming meetings and events. The Board of Commissioners have a meeting on March the 28th at 9:00 a.m., which is a called Board of Commissioners meeting. On April the 2nd at 9:00 a.m., there will be a regular Board of Commissioners meeting. Then on April the 16th at 6:30 p.m., there will be a regular Board of Commissioners meeting. We have one final SPLOS 5 committee meeting held on March the 21st, which is a Thursday at 6:30 p.m., and it is going to be here at the Henry County Administration Building, and so we welcome our citizens to attend that. So at this time, we're now open for the motion to adjourn.
Motion approved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Consider ourselves adjourned. Good evening.